We have a wonderful Chloe Schwenke is a professor of leadership and ethics at the McCourt School of Public Policy at Georgetown University. A researcher on gender equality issues and a human rights activist. Previously, she has worked at USAID, consulted to the World Bank, served as vice president at the human rights organization Freedom House, and has carried out LGBTQI+ human rights and democracy building projects in 42 countries around the world. She was one of the first 3 transgender political appointees to the federal government under President Barack Obama. Chloe, welcome. Is it on? Off at the moment? Let's welcome Chloe to the stage.
Wow. Wow. I teach public policy graduate students just over there, the downtown campus. And one of the very first things I tell them, when they're thinking about how to be advocates for their public policy is to situate yourself. Know who you are, know who you stand for, know who your friends are, but also know who your enemies are. We are in that place right now, although we may not call it public policy, it's about public policy. We are here to be change agents, and we need to be. Because we have friends. I mean, look around. Look around who we've got here. I see my Quaker friends here. I see so many transgender, non-binary, intersex friends. I see allies. I'm very happy to situate myself here. But I also see that. I also know there's a building down there we call the White House. I know that we are in basically the crosshairs of power right now. And for us to be advocates for our policy, which is basically one of, can I dare say the words, diversity, equity, inclusion, we have to stand strong in our convictions. We have to know who we are, and we have to stand in solidarity. This is us. This is precious. Just take it in for a minute. Take it in, because we need to take it in, because we don't gather as often as we should. Maybe it's a function of my age, but one of my very favorite pieces of literature is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I'm both disturbed, but also, I guess I'm not surprised. I am surprised at how easy I can fall into the analogy of standing in front of Sauron's Mordor, standing in front of an army of orcs that wish our destruction, creatures that basically embody hatred, who are bred to embody hatred. I won't go as far as to say that. But things were clear in The Lord of the Rings, and they're not always so clear for us right now when we look around and know who's standing with us. But don't be fooled. There is very strong power here, and a lot of that power wishes us harm. We have to be realistic. We have to face that. We have to understand what we're up against. I don't know if you remember the final movie where the final armies of the West, and they weren't very many, were in a circle in front of the black gates of Mordor. The drop-dead handsome Aragorn, king of Gondor, was there, so it was okay. It was okay. There were some hobbits too. But those gates are ominous. The power behind them is a threat to that small circle. It's a threat to our small circle. So we need to rise to that threat. We need to be able to get there, because those Trumpian orcs are already at work. Let me just tell you what's happened just in the last 6 weeks. You probably know some of it, but it's worth saying. First of all, and it's in process right now, the banning from our military of transgender people. That is something that's already been filed by this administration, and it's in process. Unlike last time, where the ones who were already in the military were allowed to stay, this time all have to leave. I know many of those people. I'm thinking very much of Bree Fram, Colonel Bree Fram of the U.S. Space Corps. If you want to know what a leader looks like in our military, Google Bree Fram. That's all I need to say. As you heard from my intro, I used to work at USAID. It's one of the best jobs I ever had, and some of the best people I've ever worked with. USAID has been destroyed. And with it, the aid that goes out to LGBTQI people around the world, some of that aid is literally there to keep them alive. The women, the children, the men who have AIDS, they will not get their medication. They will die. And this administration is okay with that. Oh my God. We also have seen in the last few weeks the prohibition, basically the throwing out of transgender women and girl athletes. We've also seen the NCAA capitulate immediately, even though they had a policy of inclusion for the last 15 years, they just rolled over dead. That has to stop. I see some wonderful signs here about protect trans kids. Trans children and youth are the most vulnerable of all of us, and of course that's where they would go to. And not only that, they will self-righteously brand it as, get this, save the child. I mean, a lot of you and me have been through the wrong puberty. A lot of prepubescent trans children know exactly who they are. We have the medication to stop them from going through the wrong puberty, stop them from enduring that incredibly traumatic experience, seeing their bodies grow away from them. We have the medication and the medical skills, and every single national medical association that's relevant has said, puberty blockers are safe, use them. Let's let these children get to 18 and decide for themselves. Do not make them go through puberty twice and try to undo the damage, because it is hard, it is expensive, it is painful, and it is unnecessary. I mean, this is a long list already, but I've hardly begun. We've also seen this administration, against rules of civil rights, tell the Department of Housing and Urban Development to not allow homeless transgender people to have shelter in a homeless shelter. They are literally being shown the door. I mean, this is the definition of cruelty. This is the definition of, I would call it sadism. Somebody's getting pleasure out of this kind of suffering. That is really powerfully wrong. I'll give them creativity, this administration. They're looking forward about how can they make our lives miserable even going forward. They are now deciding how to deny visas to people who want to come for World Pride here in Washington in June. They do not want trans people coming to Washington, and they do not want transgender people coming to Los Angeles as athletes or even as spectators for the Olympics in 2028. They're working on that now. How to keep trans people out of America, even as visitors. One of the worst of what they're doing, and they've been pushed back on, which I'll take some happiness from, but already in Florida, they've instituted this. Trump and Musk and others would like to make this happen all over the country. That is to take incarcerated transgender women and put them in men's prisons. We know what that means. We know that those trans women will be sexually assaulted daily. They will be raped. They will die. And MAGA is just fine with that. That has to stop. We cannot let that happen. Shame is the right word. It's not good. And then data. We've already heard our previous speaker say the work that's going on in earnest to erase us from the data that is so important in our lives. The National Institutes of Health, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Center for Health Statistics, all of these organizations have been instructing their staff, because they have to not just erase transgender, even the word gender, but to erase the data. And not just the data that's right now, to go back in the files and erase it. They want us to disappear. Are we going to disappear? No! Damn right. And then just to twist that knife in a little bit harder, if you have your passport and it needs to be renewed and you take it to Rubio's State Department, they'll do it for you. But they'll change the gender marker back to your gender marker pre-transition. Here's your passport. Let me tell you, before I transitioned 18 years ago, but in the early days, it took a while to get that F in my passport. And I work internationally. I had to go to Turkey. I got to Izmir. I was dressed beautifully. But my passport said Chloe M. And the immigration people had a field day with that. They kept me standing on my feet for 8 hours, so 3 shifts of the immigration officials could come and humiliate and make fun of me. This is no joke. This is hard. And that's where they want to return us right now. The long and the short of it is, we're not winning the culture war right now. We need to take this seriously. We need to find our strength. We need to understand what we're up against. We all sense it, but we need to speak it. We need to make sure others are there and understand it. We need to be witness to us, to who we are, to the humanity that we offer the world. I mean, I'll step back to Tolkien one more time. Those people showed up with banners, with heraldic symbols. They were proud warriors. We have a flag. We have our symbols too, and their symbols are right inside of us. They're our values. They are who we represent. We are transgender, non-binary, and intersex people. We have our own power. We have our own armor. And that's the values of authenticity, of resilience, of dignity. That's what we Quakers call that of God in everyone. Determination, courage, self-awareness, human rights, decency, that's a word that's almost disappeared, empathy, solidarity, and more. That's our armor. That's what we can put on. That's how we can win this culture war. We have so much to offer. One of the ways we can move forward is to visualize a better future. And I can do that because I have experienced a better past. I was a transgender political appointee. Oh my God. I never asked to be that. That's a long story, but it was an important story because having worked internationally with trans people all around the world, trans people who are criminalized, who are harassed, who are literally killed, they're beaten the crap out of. You should have seen the messages I got when my appointment was announced to the world. It was, you have a president that will lift up transgender people to be senior officials in your government? This is unimaginable. Imagine us being an unimaginably inclusive government once again. Let me say their names. Dylan Orr, transgender man, worked at the Department of Labor. He's now out in Seattle, amazing person. Amanda Simpson, transgender woman, worked at the Department of Defense. Strong, competent, amazing woman. And me, whatever you want to label me. One day, the three of us got a message, and not the kind of messages they're sending out now to federal workers. We got a message, though, to show up at the White House. That Bill Daley, who's the chief of staff for Obama, and his team wanted to speak to us. That's all it said. Well, we were terrified. We were very new in the job. We showed up. We didn't know what we were going to say. And we walked into that room, and right away there was warmth. There were smiles. There was inclusion. And there was a question that was asked that is never left me, and that I dream of hearing it asked once again. They looked at the three of us and said, "What can we do to support you?" Imagine the chief of staff of the White House asking us. We got to get back to that place. We absolutely must get there, because we told them. And they listened and they tried. And every single time we went to the White House after that, they reported to us what they had been doing for our community. As you heard, I was assigned at USAID, which was a high point of my life. And we had, again, a president that said human rights are for everyone. Chloe, go out to Africa and tell them that. And I did, and I got in a lot of trouble, but I did. I'm still here, so. Okay, yeah, you want to know. Well, I'll tell you, I got the shit beat out of me. I got put in hospital for 2 weeks. I've been with people that were also beaten up. I was arrested 3 times. I've lost my job 3 times. This is what being transgender can be. So I've been there, and I will go back there again if I need to, because that's what maybe we will need to do. I've lived through it, and I will live through it again. We will win. Now, I'm one of those dreaded professorial people, those coastal elites, but I am proud to be a professor. I've worked long and hard to get there. And I'm going to indulge myself at your expense and teach you something. Maybe you already know some of this already, but I want you to know how at least I see this. That is, words like transgenderism, transgender ideology, even gender ideology, these are not real things. These are devices that are intended to dismiss science, to dismiss psychology, sociology, our reality. Push back. Second, I stand before you as a biological woman. Don't let anybody tell you you are not. Okay, I'm a biological transgender woman, but I was born transgender. I didn't become transgender when I transitioned. I transitioned because I am transgender. And for those of us who are transgender, there comes a time when we just can't stand looking in the mirror and not seeing ourselves. We have to transition. But the reality that science has taught us is that we have the brains that we say our gender is telling us who we are. We have, through brain morphology, through looking at how messages are transferred in the brain, from looking at prenatal hormone exposure, we know the science. We are born transgender. I have always had a woman's brain. In fact, I've actually volunteered my brain, not now, for after I die, to be part of that continuing research. But science is clearly on our side. Am I still here? Yeah, good. Okay. So, We know who we're up against. We're up against Trump, Musk, and MAGA, and we know that they are not friendly to my science lesson. Persevere. Trump, Musk, and MAGA are big on disinformation and lies about us. Push back. I got some big news for you, too. Really big news. Never, I'm saying this as an eminent Georgetown professor, never in the history of the United States is there a single case, never, of a transgender woman assaulting a cisgender woman in a public restroom. Let me end with just some encouragement to all of you, because we're in a tough spot. We have a long struggle ahead of us. We need to take care of ourselves. I have a lot of Quaker friends that keep reminding me of that because I forget. We cannot win if we don't take care of ourselves. We cannot win if we don't try to do this together. We cannot win if we are mired in anxiety and fear. We need to hold our heads up proudly, and we do that through self-care and building solidarity. That's our first priority. I'm going to end, as our previous speaker did, with a little bit of literature. This is actually from the French philosopher Albert Camus, part of his essay, Return to Tipasa. This was brought to me by Bree Fram, previously mentioned. Listen. In the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. I realized through it all that in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. And that makes me happy, for it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me, there's something stronger, something better, pushing right back. For those of us who, I just love being with you guys. For those of us who are transgender, non-binary, or intersex, or allies, that something inside of us is our authentic selves. Never underestimate us. Thank you.